Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast where a behavioral scientist examines what it's like to live a humorous life. Glimpse into the lives of the funniest people in entertainment, business, and science as your host, Dr. Peter McGraw, explores their habits, motivations, and secrets to success. Get ready to fire up your brain and your funny bone. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast that looks at the lives of funny people. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is David Thomas. David is an assistant professor attendant in the Department of Architecture at the University of Colorado, Denver. He studies the aesthetics of fun and the value of play. For nearly 20 years prior, he was a professional game journalist, with his work appearing in the Denver Post, Edge Magazine, and Wired. With John Sharp, he recently published the book Fun, Taste, and Games: Aesthetics for the Idle, Unproductive, and Otherwise Playful. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me on.
David, if you weren't working as a professor or journalist, what would you be doing?
I would probably be doing that for free, just for fun. So I have a side gig, which is actually my day job. I'm a director of technology, so I have the most unfun job imaginable. And in fact, if you'd like for the next hour, we could talk about CRM and data analytics. It would be a blast, really. So already, if you asked me what I would do if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, I would be doing this, because this is what I'm doing.
I see.
If you follow.
That's fair.
Okay.
And so you conveniently left that off your bio.
Well, it's boring. You don't put the boring parts on your bio, do you? I mean, why would you do that?
I do want to talk CRM with you for a second.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay.
So for listeners, CRM means customer relation management.
Or constituent relationship management, so you can bring it into higher ed.
That's nice. I like that. Or stakeholder relationship management.
I know too much about this stuff. It's not fun.
So this will come up. I'm working on a new project called Shtick to Business, serious business lessons from the Masters of Comedy. And you were recently at a talk that I gave. Yeah,
it was a great talk, by the way. I think you're onto something with this. I really want to encourage you to keep doing that work.
I appreciate it. Actually, I'm excited about it. It's I would say this is it's meant for a more professional audience rather than an academic audience. And it's the first professional talk that I think that I've given that I've gotten so much positive feedback.
Like people could translate it. It wasn't just intellectually interesting. They felt like they could use it.
Yeah. And, so as an example of this, someone sent the coordinator, this like 70-plus-year-old, like emeritus, retired law professor, sent this incredibly kind note to the person who coordinated about how good he thought it was. And then the same week, some 20-year-old approached me and told me how excited he was about it. Like, I was like, wow, that's exciting. So back to the CRM thing. So
we're really going to talk about CRM.
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Let's go. I'm ready.
So in terms of developing this, like, I love creating products.
Right.
Like, I like making things.
Yeah.
And so the talk is a thing. And then any other things that go along with it. So maybe, writing a popular press article or
right.
Something like that. But the problem is when you make things, you need to find a way to get them to people.
Right.
And that's what customer relation management does well.
Ideally,
when it's done well. But I don't want to do it. And right, like I don't want to do a newsletter, and I don't want to do a subscription list, because I'd rather spend that time and effort on making the thing rather than working on the communication. So I have a good friend. He appeared on this podcast before. His name's Darwin Metzger. And Darwin works in marketing. He does influencer marketing. But he's the classic kind of creative, kind of counterintuitive thinker. Mm-hmm. And so one day, actually I had food poisoning at the time. So in between throwing up, I was talking to him about this. And I said, Darwin, I want you to make a case for why I don't need a CRM, why I don't need a funnel, why I don't need to do all these things. And he goes, well, no, you kind of need it. And there was like, if there was one person in the world who was going to tell me I didn't need it, it was him.
So you're screwed.
Do I need it?
No, you don't. I mean, you do and you don't. I mean, here's the reality.
Okay.
Is what a CRM is underlying is it's a way for you to organize your contacts.
Yes.
And for you, most people are probably a contact in one sense, right? Like I'm a subscriber or I'm an audience member. And businesses get screwed up because sometimes the person's is a tastemaker. Sometimes in business, someone's a customer. They're going to buy stuff. Sometimes the person may be a friend. I mean, there's all these relationships you have to manage, and you don't want your different lines of business cross communicating. But for you, everybody's just one person.
Okay.
I mean, they're just I'm interested in Pete McGraw's products. And probably if I'm interested in your humor talk, I'm interested in your humor book, or I'm interested in, it's like you don't have to really differentiate that.
Okay.
So that's the first reason why you don't need one. But you do need one in the sense of you need to keep track of all these people.
Yes.
Then I think the next reason why you don't need one is why businesses usually need them is because they have all these processes. And they're very complex. I mean, let me talk about higher ed because it's what I know. Like, to the outside, higher ed's really simple, right? You send in your application, you send in your application fee, someone looks at it, you get admitted, and you go to class, right? Behind the scenes, it's crazy town. So many people are doing so many different things. So a CRM helps coordinate that, right?
I see.
So I can say like, well, while you're checking this person's transcripts, this person's working on their financial aid, that person is looking at departmental requirements, that person. And so they can kind of coordinate all those business processes. I don't think your life is that complicated. I mean, you're a very sophisticated guy, but I don't think you're that complicated.
I do try to keep it simple.
Now, if you want to do Pete McGraw Inc., then you just need to hire people.
Okay.
And then those people come to you and say, Pete, your life's so complicated. We need a CRM. You write the check.
I see. Okay.
I think you just need a Google Doc with all these names in it. And when you want to talk to people, you should send stuff to them. That's what I think.
That's fair. No, actually, I appreciate that.
I'm not a marketing professor. I don't know.
But that is in the vein of a CRM. It's just the most simple, old school version. And I just get a way to be able to email lots of people at once without it becoming spam.
Yeah. I mean, that's the heart of it. That's what it is.
Okay.
I honestly think that people think CRM is going to solve some problem for them, but really all it is just paving the dirt trails you're on. So
yeah, I like that saying. I'm trying to keep my life simpler, and so
well, that's why you have a website, right? That's why you do podcasts. Although, by the way, no one's listening to this podcast right now. They already turned this off. It's like CRM. What the hell? It's done.
No, but I got them hooked with whatever I'm going to title this thing. So,
okay, is that
so
it?
they're
Okay.
waiting for the excitement.
Just got to build up to it. You bring them down, and lift them up. Okay.
So I've talked about this before. I'm the number one consumer of this podcast.
Right.
I'm accomplishing my goal.
I like your alignment of your personal values with your output. You don't get disappointed, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about your current book.
Right. Yeah.
And then you are already working as a good writer should be while he's promoting his book. He is writing his second book, and I assume you're thinking about your third book.
At least, yeah. Quickly, I think it would help anyone who might actually have listened to this thus far. I met you when we both were talking many years ago on the TEDx Boulder stage, and you were talking about what makes things funny, and I was talking about what makes things fun.
Yes.
So in the process, you went on to write the humor code and continue to move on. I still was working on the same dang thing the whole time. And it was a partnership with an art history and design professor at Parsons, John Sharp. He's actually a Renaissance art historian, now turned game designer. And he and I connected on the idea that we needed some sort of aesthetic framework for talking about video games. We had this sense that the current art aesthetics weren't working. And I know that sounds really boring, but it really comes to the bear when you're trying to talk about, hey, what makes this video game better than that video game? And people are trying to bring all this art and kind of apparatus to it, and it just didn't seem satisfying to us. So we spent about 9 years writing this little book just to answer the question, what's at the heart of games? What makes one game better than another? And so we came up with this framework, this fun tasting games framework. Over all that time, we really discovered something about fun, which was fun's the aesthetic that we were looking for. We didn't know what it was going to be called. We said, fun. Why do people play games? Not because they're beautiful, not because they're educational, not because they're entertaining. People play games because they're fun. In fact, the definition of a broken game is a game that's not fun.
I see.
And I mean, this is not like, wow, what great insight. This is just sort of like you do your academic research. You come around to the obvious after a long time. So that's what the book's about. The book's about fun. So when we finally finish writing this book, and so it's going to be hitting the shelves here in the next month or so, it asks a million other questions. Well, what do you do? Hey, you've discovered America. You've discovered this aesthetics of fun. Now you got a whole continent to explore. So the next book I'm interested in and I'm working on right now, I've called it Ludic Form for Architecture, because architecture is one of those fields that has a lot of playfulness in it. It has a lot of fun in it, but it suppresses it because architects want to adhere.
They want to be serious.
Well, they want
They're
to
serious artists.
Yeah, serious artists adhere to the beauty standards, forms of beauty, and architects have a hard time with things like Disneyland or in Denver, Casa Bonita,
Oh, yes.
or any kind of idiosyncratic or wacky architecture. They just don't know what to do with it. In fact, they created a whole architectural category called the folly. So it's like, well, if it's not serious enough, we'll just throw it into the folly category. So what I thought, you know what architects need? They need a book. They need a reference book of forms, like, like a slide, right? You and I can sit here and say like, well, yeah, I mean, that's like an architectural form designed for fun. I mean, you could use a slide functionally, but mostly if you see a slide, the first thing you think about is, oh, that would be fun to go down.
Yes.
It's very simple.
Versus that it's faster than a set of stairs or an elevator.
Yeah, in some cases that might be true, but
Yes.
you take a kid into a fire department, the fire pole serves a speed purpose for emergency, but to your mind, it just looks like that'd be fun to go down.
Yes.
So I'm just cataloging tons of these forms and kind of creating a vocabulary around it. So it'll be like a reference book. So you could, like the same way you could look at any architecture book and look at, oh, this is a coin, or this is a pillar, or this is a pilaster. It'd just be like all these architectural forms for play, and maybe encourage architects to think about fun as a part of their design language instead of being like, well, I'm designing a serious building. There could be no fun, no play, no humor involved in this. So that's what that book is about. It's just a catalog, but it'll probably take me another 9 years to write that one. I'm slow.
That's fine. You're a young man.
For now. Yeah.
So the title of this book is Fun, the one that's out now, Fun, Taste, and Games.
Right.
So to me, the obvious thing would have been to call it Fun and Games.
Yeah. Why taste?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's funny. Here's what I love about aesthetics. I think it might actually be lower on the interest totem pole than CRM. Nobody wants to talk about aesthetics, right?
Oh, I do.
Well, then I'm in a good place. Because what aesthetics simultaneously sounds like an over-intellectualizing of something obvious, which is, oh, some things are pretty and some things aren't. Simultaneously with the fact that there could be no science to it, right? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That's how people like to think about aesthetics. But both of those contexts are really kind of wrong, because if beauty's in the eye of the beholder, how do we have things to say like, oh, I don't know, the Mona Lisa is a beautiful painting, or Florence is a beautiful city, or that's a really beautiful coat that the guy's wearing. So we know there's something, in our brain.
Wonders of the world and so on.
There's something there. And I mean,
Yes.
aesthetics kind of tries to understand what that something is. And it can get into some pretty deep philosophy. So when you start talking about fun as an aesthetic form, it's kind of like people are like, I think you might be familiar with this. When you start talking about the science of humor, people are kind of like, are you sure you want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about the aesthetics of fun, it's just worse. So why taste? Well, you got to think about, well, taste has a lot to do with aesthetics, right? Because you can't say beauty's in the eye of the beholder, because that doesn't make sense, because that would create, I would say, philosophically solipsism, right? If beauty's in the eye of the beholder, then
there's nothing beautiful and there's nothing ugly.
Or beauty's just some sort of statistical measure of where people happen to agree with their own private view that thing's beautiful. So that doesn't work. So beauty, aesthetics can't be based on taste, but you can't take taste out of it either.
See. Right.
And I think, since, this is a humor podcast, I would say I could use some of the things you've talked about in terms of humor, which is like, not everything's funny to everyone, right?
It's actually nearly impossible to find something that everybody agrees is funny.
Right. But here's the great thing about taste. Taste is different from a critical assessment, right? I mean, I can say like, I get why you would think that's funny. I just don't. Not funny to me, right?
Yes.
Best easy way to talk about taste is like food, right? You can just be like, I don't like spinach. I can't argue with you about that.
I know.
But if you start to say, you shouldn't like spinach because it's terrible, you're making a critical assessment, right? And so I think that we don't do that with food so much. We can be like, you don't like sushi, you must be crazy, but it's kind of playful. But I could say, you think Sarah Silverman's funny? There must be something wrong with you.
Yes, right.
So we can't pull taste out of it. So John and I just realized as we built this really nice philosophical model to describe fun, we had to readmit taste to just sort of say, hey, you don't get to just take taste out of the equation. So that's fun, taste, and games. So that's the framework. The good news is it's a pretty short book. So it's not... We boiled this down pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about aesthetics. The work that I'm familiar with is work out of actually social and cognitive psychology.
Okay.
This guy, I think the last name's Reber, and then a bunch of people on this paper. The names are escaping me at this point. It'll come to me in a second. Oh, Norbert Schwartz is also a co-author on it. And they make the argument that what underlies things that are aesthetically pleasing or beautiful is the notion of fluency. is this sort of ease of processing. And so they do basically a review of literature. So for example, things that are symmetrical tend to be prettier than things that are asymmetrical, and things that are symmetrical also happen to be easier to process.
Right.
And so they're looking at, of course, the perceptual, emotional commonalities that we all have as humans. I don't believe they dive deeply into the individual differences.
Right.
But for instance, I think the model helps explain differences with regard to experience, right? So as you get more experienced, it becomes easier to
Like decode
perceive and decode
patterns.
complex
Yeah.
things. And so then more complex things can become more pleasing as you get more experience, which explains things like art and
Right.
and so on.
Well, and I mean, that's what happens when you put a bunch of scientists to
Yeah,
try to
exactly.
figure out art. I mean, it's not wrong. It's just incomplete is really what it amounts to. And the nice thing is, philosophically speaking, aesthetics, as we think of it's not that old. I mean, it really started in the probably 1700s, early 1800s. But like if you talk about Kant, because you got to talk about aesthetics, you got to talk about Kant in the West. But he even separated into kind of these two categories, the beautiful and the sublime.
I see, yes.
And so,
And what is the sublime?
well, that's what's interesting. That's why I'd say it's incomplete. The science definition. Standing at the edge of a cliff and watching these clouds, watching a storm come over the ocean. He actually talked about the sublime of like the terror of nature. I mean, really, nature can be completely, totally terrifying. But there's something just deeply aesthetically satisfying about it at the same time. So he even separated the beautiful from the sublime and said, well, it's all aesthetic experience because it's not rational.
I see. The social psychologists and cognitive psychologists of the world even would call this awe. So it would be something that is awe-inspiring. And I think that there's some sense of, I don't think this is necessary or sufficient, but the size, for instance,
Just so big.
Things that are, things that are big, for instance, or things that are like a big mountain is more awe-inspiring than a small mountain, that kind of thing. But I don't actually recall all the conditions, but so they've split this.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, if you're a social psychologist and you're trying to turn this into useful tools, I mean, it kind of makes sense to me. I just, I really take this aesthetic side for more of the art kind of stuff where you're trying to comprehend the messiness of it.
Yes.
Because, in one sense you can say, oh, it's all patterns. And then you're like, and then there's Jackson Pollock. Oh, fuck. Like, what happened to my rules?
Yes,
oh,
right.
No. It's more complex sets of patterns. At a certain point in time, you're like, dude, you went down the rabbit hole and goodbye.
Yes.
So I think there's just something to be said. There is formal beauty. I mean, there's these patterns. I'll give you another example from architecture. You'll find that there's like these classic architectural forms. And some people believe that like all good architecture follows these classic forms. Except I've read these people that have written about, well, yeah, look at this thing. It's lopsided. It doesn't follow the perfect rule of thirds or whatever, but it's still, we consider it beautiful. So it's kind of funny that like any artist has the set of rules, but sometimes it's how they break the rules, which is the most interesting, which again, I think is so much closer to the fun and funny stuff, which is it's not the form. You need the form. I don't think there's any reason you shouldn't study the form, but it's how people break the form that really is probably what's so exciting about life and humans. It's what connects humor and fun, I think.
And I like that. I mean, I think Picasso gets credit for the quote, but I don't know if he actually said it, which is that study the rules like a professional so you can break them like an artist.
Yeah.
And I think
sounds about right.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, there's something really about that when in the world of comedy. So relating this idea that, so I got a call recently from a journalist who was writing an article about Family Guy.
Okay.
And is Family Guy funny kind of thing? It's sort of the question. It's 20-year anniversary of Family Guy, et cetera. And we talked at length about this idea. And what I was saying is, you can't say that Family Guy's not funny because it's been on the air for 20 years. Every week, thousands of people laugh at Family Guy. Well, you can ask though, is Family Guy good comedy? So to me, that's that idea that like there's a world of people who are offended by Family Guy, a world of people who are bored by Family Guy, and a world of people delighted by Family Guy.
And some of that's back to taste too. I mean,
that's exactly the point, right? Is that both of those judgments, funny through the lens that you see the world, your values and culture and so on, and then your beliefs about what makes good art. In this case, good comedy also depends on some belief about what art is supposed to do and where it fits. And
well, I think that, what's fascinating about when you kind of approach aesthetics from both the formal side and the taste side, so in my case, the fun and the taste side, taste gives you opportunities to do things like educate taste, right? Hey, we're educators. We like this idea that says, when you're a kid, it's all macaroni and cheese and chicken nuggets. But your job as a parent is to try to get your kids to try new things. When you bring students into a class, you're trying to get them to try on new things. You can't make somebody care about something, but you can at least expose them to it. And so, when John and I talked about games, we'd sort of say sophisticated game players, like take your nerdy board game players, just despise a game like Monopoly. It's not balanced. It goes on too long. You get to the point in the game where someone's going to win, but you have to sit there and wait.
And suffer.
So from a taste standpoint, you can get all high and mighty and be like, well, this is a terrible game, except it goes back to your Family Guy thing. If it's such a terrible game, why does every home in America have at least one copy of Monopoly, right?
Right.
So you start to say, well, maybe there's something, there's an approach to that game. Maybe there's something about that game that's appealing to certain kinds of tastes. And then I would just flip over and use the example of music. It's like, unless you're a crazy person, I bet you like different kinds of music.
I do indeed.
And sometimes you feel like you like the upbeat stuff. Sometimes you like the downbeat stuff. So even internally, your taste has a lot to do with what you're looking for. But that being said, I could argue with you like, oh, you like that band? Well, okay. I mean, I can't argue with you like it, but I could say, but have you heard this band? Or I can start to teach you, like, listen to the drum line. Or listen to the way John Bonham plays the bass drum in Led Zeppelin. That's why he's considered so. And you're like going, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. And then you start to develop the flavor. Alcohol culture is all about, like, learning these horrible flavors.
Yes.
And then you kind of like, oh, now I can identify the flavors. So now I like this toxic thing.
Yeah, that's fun. That's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking, the movie Jiro Dreams of Sushi has come up a number of times on this podcast.
Odd. Interesting.
And
because that's such a hilarious movie.
But it's, it's a movie, it's a documentary about sushi that actually is a story about achievement and about skill acquisition. What I think is interesting is, like, to your point, is someone may or may not like sushi.
Right.
And that's whether something's funny or not. But whether a particular chef is good at sushi or not is more that question of art. And watching Jiro Dreams of Sushi can educate you about sushi in a way that can enhance your experience with good sushi and hurt your experience with bad sushi.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think the same with music, or, an idea that you can, I like this idea of teaching taste.
You get an educated taste. We all do that. We do it to each other. We go to school.
I took a wine. Yeah, I took a wine before I went on the job market. I took a wine tasting class just so I would not be an incompetent fool at these fancy dinners.
Yeah. And you probably developed your taste along the way, so now you can tell the difference to some degree.
Yeah,
right?
I can tell between really? White wine and red wine.
Okay, there you go.
I can tell.
Actually, hang on. They've done experiments with that where they color white wine with red. And experts can't tell the difference.
Is that right?
Yeah, they can't.
That is fascinating. I have not heard that. I'm making notes about this.
I'm sure I read that from a reliable source.
Yeah, I'm sure it was on Reddit.
Sure. It might have been in Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow.
Oh, is that right? I'll have to check.
It was some credible source.
Got it.
Trust me. I didn't make that up.
Okay, so then what makes a game fun then?
Well, so I'm glad you asked, because that's what I spend all of my time thinking about. So we broke fun down into three components. So this is the structural sides, not the taste sides. The three components would say is that we call it ludic form, set outsidedness, and ambiguity. And by the way, I'm not going to go into this because this is a little bit boring, but we borrowed the framework from Kant and then updated it to our needs, because Kant didn't write about fun. In case you're curious, Immanuel Kant never wrote about fun.
Okay. He did talk about humor.
Well, a
little bit.
Yeah, he wrote a bunch about aesthetics. And so, we kind of think, well, let's just borrow out this aesthetic framework, because it's a pretty useful aesthetic framework to talk about fun. So that's where the three parts came from. Ludic form is...
Wait, what was number 2?
Set outsideness.
Okay.
So the only reason I reference Kant is because set outsideness is a little weird. I'll get to that. Ludic form is easy. Ludic is the Latin term for play. And so, it gets used a lot in game studies. One of the classic books about play. Johann Hunziker wrote the book Homo Ludens.
He sounds like the kind of guy who's Riot at Parties.
Yeah, it's a great book. If you haven't read that book, you should read the book.
I haven't. Tell me the name of it again.
It's called Homo Ludens, Man the Player. So, sidebar, Hunziker was a scholar of the Middle Ages, and while he was basically incarcerated during World War II by the Nazis, he was, somewhere he was sitting. So he wrote a book about, I think that play is the thing that drives all civilization.
Okay.
Because he's, like judges wear costumes, robes, legal systems all kind of have this playfulness in there. All civilization, ritual, everything all comes out of this desire to play.
I see.
So it's a very fascinating thesis, and it's a pretty legible book considering it was written in the 40s. Anyway, so you should read that book.
Okay.
But so Ludic form just basically means, there's a certain kind of like set of structures that allow play to happen in games, right? That's what we were starting with.
I see.
And, people have written lots and lots about this. It's partly why you can just recognize a game. And you could pull out a game like Senet, which is 2,000 years old, or Mancala, which who knows how old that is. And you don't have to know the rules or anything. You just look at it and you say, it's a game, right? I mean, something about, there's a set of design principles, and we didn't want to get mired in that, but we didn't say it was sufficient aesthetically to say I have the parts of a game. But you can recognize the parts of a game.
Is it the idea that you can recognize that there's some constraints, there's some rules that are present?
And there's different people inventory it differently. And you should probably understand that John and I came from the game studies world, people that study video games largely. So we kind of didn't get deep into things like, what is Ludic form? What are all the Ludic forms? Because we're like, oh my God, you could read the rest of your life on people that have tried to create ontologies of Ludic form, dice and spinning around dizziness and rules of competition and rules of role playing. That would be the classic 4 categories from this guy Roger Colloy, who was actually a sociologist. But you got all kinds of people that say endlessly these patterns, game patterns.
I see.
So we just wanted to recognize that that's a part of the aesthetic framework. Is there's a Ludic form, right?
Yeah, I want to, if I may, I'd like to.
Sure, show.
It is. I've had a number of improvisers come on here, and the game in improv, the long form game, is called the Herald.
Okay.
And so the Herald has come up a number of times. And what I'd like to try to do is, I don't know all the beats of the Herald because I've only done 2 levels of improv. And I think you get to the full Herald at 4 at UCB. So I want to try to think about the Herald through these three conditions.
Yeah,
so,
it ought to work.
So clearly, like, the idea is that the Herald is not a board game, but it has rules. Right. So it has a structure, and you're supposed to follow to the best of your ability that structure. So by that element,
so
it's a game.
The rules,
still.
The rules are the Ludic form. Right?
I see.
I mean, what I don't want to say is Ludic form or rules, because there's a whole bunch of things that don't have distinctly prescribed rules, like child's play, like dress up. I mean, there's rules, but the rules are fluid. And so I just don't want to go down that rabbit hole at the moment. But you could just, for the sake of argument, say Ludic form is the rules.
I see. Or the structure of it. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because
patterns and so on.
Even in professional sports, I mean, the rules define how big the ball is.
Indeed. How big the court is and how high the rim is.
Yeah, but the rules themselves aren't sufficient to play a game of professional football.
Indeed.
You got to have helmets and balls and refs. And so even that's all prescribed in the rules. So fascinating stuff. I mean, you really can go, and people they've gone to great lengths to try to characterize that. So for John and I, just Ludic form. Okay. So the Herald has rules, Ludic form.
Got it.
The next thing, you're going to love this, because this is the part that I think starts to make more sense. Set outsideness. When Kant wrote about art, and this is why I have to go back to Kant, he talked about art having this property of you approached it with disinterestedness, because I think it was how he separated like a painting from a beautiful hammer, because a hammer's purpose is to hammer nails. So you never approach, you wouldn't really necessarily approach a hammer with disinterest. You'd approach a hammer with, I'm going to use this to pound something. But a painting doesn't do anything. You just look at it. It's just beautiful, right? I mean, it's sort of the short version of that. So he had this idea of disinterest, and we translate that over into games and start talking about set outsideness, because games have to be set outside of real life or they don't work quite right. So let me give you an example.
Okay.
Russian roulette has all the properties of a game.
I see.
It's got rules.
Yes.
Some people would say it's got an end state. It's got a goal.
Yeah.
Right?
There's ambiguity.
Yeah. It's a lot of ambiguity. But what it is not set outside.
I see.
Right.
Yes.
That's why Beer Hunter, the great Bob and Doug McKenzie game, is fun because it's set outside. Because the beer hunter is, you take a 6-pack of beer, you shake up one of the beers, then you take turns opening the can by your head.
I see, right, yes.
So the consequences, I mean, it's unpleasant, but it's not, so it's still set outside from regular life.
Right.
So I don't know the game of the Herald, but the Herald is by necessity set outside. It's not something that you have to do, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that certainly fits. It's made up. It's not part of the audience's day-to-day. The consequences are minimal.
Yeah, and maybe if you're a professional improver and you're practicing this, maybe it doesn't feel set outside, right? But that's another kind of can of worms. But another way to think about set outsideness, which is super easy, is it's the court or the pitch or the field where you play.
Yeah,
right?
I see.
And it's like you enter into that place where you're set outside.
Yeah, so the connection obviously between fun and funny is close.
Yeah.
My belief about the roots of comedy is in play.
Yeah.
Is in play fighting in particular as a form of kind of practice for life.
Okay,
And the idea is that play fighting, rough and tumble play, is not only present in humans, but also in other mammals. And it has that set outsidedness. Like, you're not fighting for real.
Yeah.
There are limits and rules associated. Like, when you play fight, you're not allowed to gouge someone's eyes out.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because we're, in that.
Not usually.
Not usually.
Yeah.
Well, now you're fighting, right? Now it's real, right?
Yeah.
Like, now it's war. And so you're sitting in that kind of space.
So that's, some of this is all symmetrical. So you see a lot of set outsideness is packed into the rules, like what you can and can't do.
I see.
But there's still that sense, aesthetically speaking, that you kind of have to recognize that the set outsideness is really operating all the time in a functioning, successful game.
Yeah, this is so the early work that we did on humor looked at what we call psychological distance.
Okay.
And so the way we always viewed psychological distance as like a lever that you could either turn up or turn down the violation, right? So our argument is humor arises from benign violations. Distance, whether it be physical, relational, temporal, spatial, or in reality, right?
Yeah,
you're either closer or farther away from this emotional object. The distance allows you to be able to experience bigger violations.
Makes sense.
So this idea of set outsidedness is especially related to this notion of what's called hypotheticality.
Okay.
So you and I are in what we think is the real world, at least. You know what I mean? This seems like the real world. However, if we started doing a sketch where we're playing different people, now we're now in a hypothetical world where I'm Elvis Costello and you're someone else, right? Like that kind of a thing, which happens in improv all the time. And
How
happens
did you
in
pick
comedy all the
Elvis
time.
Costello of all the possible characters you could pick?
It's fun.
That's the one you picked.
He was I was listening to him yesterday.
Okay.
Instead of Elvis, I was Elvis Costello.
I'm just like, of all the people in the world, Pete's going to role play Elvis Costello. Of course.
I don't know where that came from, except that I was primed.
Okay. Yeah, that was.
It was either that or Frank Black. Those are the two people I've been listening to.
At least as weird. So. But anyway, yeah, I mean, that's I think that's right. So again, blooded form and set outsideness, they work together. That kind of makes sense, but that is not the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter, and you've set it up perfectly, is ambiguity. Every time I talk about this, I always go through the really quick source of this kind of idea of ambiguity. It's Gregory Bateson, the great polymath that I guess he did a lot of things. He was married to Margaret Mead, among other things. But like all good academics, one day he decided he wanted to know if animals had meta-communication, communication about communication. So he went to the zoo, and he's sitting there, he's watching the monkeys play, or just goofing around, and they're play fighting, right? And then he's like, oh, they're biting each other. There's a bite that meant to signify a bite, but they're not really biting each other.
Yeah.
And so he went, holy shit.
It's laser tag.
Well, so he answered his question.
Yeah.
But then he got completely distracted and said, wait a minute, this meta-communication, this bite that's not a bite, is the source of play and fantasy. So it's in animals and it's in us. And so what John and I did is we kind of took that concept and abstracted a little more broadly from bite that's not a bite to this is not. And Bateson didn't talk about fun. He didn't really nail fun. He talked about play. He didn't really talk about fun. We said this ambiguity, this bite that's not a bite, this is not, is really at the heart of the matter of what makes successful play. And you can think it's super symmetrical with set outsideness because, like in your example, if we're play fighting and it tumbles into real fighting, the ambiguity's gone, right? The meaning of, I shot you, no, you missed, I cut your arm off, okay, well, we're negotiating that ambiguity in play. But as soon as I actually cut your arm off, then, the ambiguity's gone.
I see.
So it's kind of a slippery concept, but I usually use lots of examples to try to cement it, doing a lot of architecture stuff. I always talk about Disneyland because it's a great example of ambiguity. It's filled with these examples. And people say that like Disneyland, or people that don't like Disneyland always say, I hate Disneyland. It's so fake. And people that like Disneyland go, no kidding. That's why I like it. It's castles, not a castle. Rivers that are actually going circles. Hippopotamuses that aren't hippopotamuses. I mean, the textbook case, there's a mouse that's not a mouse. He's got a house that's not a house. I mean, Disney over and over again is playing with this idea that it's real, but it's not real. And what's super important about ambiguity, and it's kind of why I hammer on it so much, is that as soon as the ambiguity collapses, the play goes away, the fun goes with it. You got to maintain ambiguity. Now, this is really disruptive to our British empiricist background, right? Black, white, male, female, good, bad, and all of a sudden you're saying,
now it's yin yang.
It's kind of it's in this weird moment where both things are true, and it's liberating. It can be very confusing. It can be very exciting, but it's that state that we exist in. So let me do one more thing because I can tie this back to fun because our old friend Arthur Koestler, right?
Yes.
Another guy who kind of just studied things and just wrote stuff. And Koestler wrote about bisociation, which I know is in your book, and I know it's symmetrical with the benign violation. And Koestler thought that this bisociation of bringing two planes of meaning together at the same time was a source of humor, science, and art. Now, he didn't talk about fun either, because he was very instrumental, and he even describes humor as once you bisociate those planes, or once the benign violation happens, he talks about that drop of adrenaline and the laugh, right? Because there's a moment of ambiguity that resolves. But play is like the chord is still, it's just open, right? It's not resolved.
I see.
And once it resolves, it's over with. It's kind of why you finally end play. It's kind of like you leave Disneyland. It's why set outsideness is so important because, sooner or later you come back into a more kind of, stable state. But that unstable ambiguity is so fascinating. And I think that's what ties humor and fun together is they both work with ambiguity. They both work with a very similar set of tools. But one strives to drive to, that pop, that moment where it all fits together. And play demands, it doesn't quite get there.
I see.
It's always the anticipation. It's wandering around in Disneyland and your brain's going ape shit because there's all this stuff that's not real that's right there. And people pay a lot of money for that feeling.
Yeah, okay, so I want to ask you a few things.
So anyway, that was the whole book right there. You don't have to buy it. So
So the critique of Monopoly is at some point in the game, it's obvious who's going to win. And then the ambiguity evaporates and now you're just working on an assembly line.
Right. If the fun for you is trying to win the game system.
I see.
If the fun for you is just hanging out with your friends, having drinks, eating snacks, shooting the breeze, then the game can be
facilitating that.
Yes.
That's right.
And that's why Monopoly still exists, but that's a taste thing. But it's like it's kind of like if you play chess, right? Or if you play tennis, you don't really want to play with someone way better or way worse than you because the outcome's kind of set.
Yes.
You might play with someone not as good as you to help them learn. You might play with someone better than you to practice. But that wouldn't be fun. That's kind of where that ambiguity is so important that, and so yeah, a Monopoly game that you want to win and you're not going to win, flip the board, right?
Yeah, right. So long time ago, I thought I was going to be a sports psychologist.
Okay.
And so I picked up a second major. I was a psychology major as an undergrad, and then I picked up an exercise science major, second major. And I remember taking a class about sport.
Okay.
And so one of the definitions, the definition of sport is somewhat similar. Like there's certain rules and so on. But one of the things that differentiates a sport from non-sports is that the outcome is not predetermined.
Right.
And so, but for instance, professional wrestling is not a sport, right? Because the outcome is
theater.
Is right. So that's exactly like, so the difference between sport and a movie or entertainment is this notion that's there. But professional wrestling is still fun, right? Because to the audience, they don't know what the outcome is going to be.
Right. But they also know it's fake. Right.
Yeah.
I mean that's we get absorbed in that drama. It is fun.
Yes. Right. It sits at that. It meets this kind of criteria.
Yeah. And by the way, you've stepped into something that's bedeviled game studies for the longest time. People that study games is like what do we do with professional sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, it looks like labor, from the outside. It doesn't like what differentiates playing football from playing in the Super Bowl. And most people are kind of like, well, it's that's labor, that's instrumental or whatever. I think the Fun Tasting Games framework actually unlocks that a little bit for you. It's not what you're doing. It's not just the Ludic form or the set outsideness. It's the ambiguity.
The ambiguity, I see.
Like the Patriots are going to work today.
Yes.
They're not having fun. Winning's fun, right? That moment of I've accomplished something meaningless that's joyful. But I think Monday morning, those guys can all go home and play football with their kids. And it could be fun.
Yeah, I see. Well,
so
they
again,
probably need a few days to recover.
Well, yeah. But again, so that's why it's important to have those three parts, because Ludic form and set outsideness just gives you a kind of a nice kit of parts. But in operation, it doesn't work together to provide that ambiguity.
I see. I want to ask you a few other questions kind of related to this. So you were talking about ancient board games. So one of them is called Go.
Yeah.
Incredibly popular in Asia, an incredibly difficult game.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the world's best Go players now lose to computers.
Yeah.
Right. So basically artificial intelligence has learned to play Go so well that it beats world masters of this kind of thing. I'm just curious, do you have any comment about, like, as someone who's studying games, now you have computers that are able to learn how to win.
Yeah.
But clearly, obviously, they're learning to win, but it's not clear, at least yet, that the computer enjoys winning.
Yeah,
right?
Well, that's a good question. I think you're asking a really super hard question because it kind of asks a lot about why we play.
Okay.
And there's actually there's an essay that John wrote in the book about Marcel Duchamp. Duchamp's famous for the urinal that probably he didn't.
Oh, yes.
It was somebody else did that. But he's famous for all this early modern art. He stopped doing art to play chess, right? And so from the game studies world, Marcel Duchamp, the patron saint of games, right? Because he shows the connection between art and games. But when you get down to it, there's a sort of a nebbishy quality to chess, where it was this fascination of patterns and stuff.
Yes.
Which does look a little bit more like art than pure play.
Okay.
And so I kind of wonder, although I wouldn't say I've thought it through at all since you just asked the question, that the entrance of the computer probably changes the nature of how we think about those patterns. It probably doesn't damage the play for most of us who aren't that good in the first place.
Sure.
Yeah. But it could. I mean, anything that exterminates ambiguity, I would say it's like gambling is a great example. I mean, people that enjoy gambling set limits. They know what they're in for. They win, they lose. But if you meet someone who's like addicted to gambling, I don't mean like their house is, but they just compulsively buy tickets and they really think they're going to win. From the outside, you can sort of see that there's an ambiguity that's missing there. It's become like, in a sense, a psychological crutch or something. And I'm not trying to comment in particular on like some psychological process of play, but just to sort of say that's how ambiguity comes in. And it can be different from the outside and the inside. Or maybe even a better example would be violent video games, right? Mm. And I think that there's been this war. Violent video games make kids violent. No, they don't. You reintroduce ambiguity. Now you start to say, well, violent video games would be no fun if they weren't pretty good feeling of killing somebody.
Yes. Well, which
is a horrible thing to say.
But they're good at making the bad guys bad.
Well, that helps, whatever, that be your benign violation, right? Kind of assuage some of that.
Sure.
But still, they make them more and more realistic. So from the outside, you can look at it and you're like going, these are murder simulators.
Yeah.
And instead of saying, no, they're not, you should sort of say, no, they're not in certain important ways, right?
Yes.
And to the extent that someone plays a video game as rehearsal for real life activity, where'd the ambiguity go?
Yeah, I see.
It's gone. But if a kid plays these games, connects with his friends, has fun, it's not making him fall into some other despairing behavior, isolation or whatever, then who cares, right? And that's why I think ambiguity is so challenging for people, because we are taught from day one, black and white, Democrat, Republican. And if you look at it and you start to say, well, the psychological process is probably really muddy.
Yes.
And it turns out we're really freaking good at it. But we had culturally been taught not to do that. So there's a battle going on. It's why entertainment, I think, got sidelined, because entertainment's been our socially sanctioned place to go feel ambiguity.
I see. So I want to ask you...
Not to get all dark on you here.
No, but I want to ask you about your reaction when it comes to game playing.
Yeah.
Right? So there's an infinite number of choices when it comes to game playing.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously game playing can come at the cost of other endeavors.
Yep.
And so do you think of there being some sort of hierarchy of games? That is, that some games help develop us more than others?
So I'm going to give you two answers to that. The first answer is there's a great book that Brian Sutton Smith wrote called The Ambiguity of Play. And Sutton Smith he's dead now, but he wrote voluminously in the education field about play. The Ambiguity of Play is a fascinating book because he went through, I had to recall it from memory, like 9 different, what he called kind of like rhetorics of play. And one of the rhetorics of play was we play for education.
Mm-hmm.
Small animals play.
Yeah, you learn.
Yeah. But remember, that was one of 9.
Okay.
Like another one was we play to create social bonds.
Indeed.
Yeah. Some we play to, like the catharsis theory, right? We play to get it out.
Uh-huh.
So I think it's important to say, first of all, you can play for other purposes, but you don't have to, right? So, I mean, play is kind of multidimensional. He ultimately settled on the idea that play was an evolutionary adaptation so that we would prepare ourselves for future things that we don't know what they are, a.k.a., oh, the world's ambiguous. What was a tiger was my biggest threat yesterday is this other thing. I don't know what it is, but I mean, it's kind of an interesting theory. So that's kind of part of my answer.
I would certainly say that the big proponents of sport would make this similar argument, right? Sport helps prepare you for real life, dealing with teams, dealing with challenges, and so on.
And it's such a comfortable, rational way to box play, right?
Look, I would say this is, given U.S. culture's preoccupation with sports, that's an easy thing to lean on. As a reason that you should spend a disproportionate amount of time
playing,
shipping your kids around to soccer tournaments. Any case.
No, but it's a fascinating observation because we don't apply that same rhetoric to video games.
Not typically.
Some people have,
Yes,
like
sure.
John Seeley Brown's like saying, World of Warcraft's preparing the business leaders of tomorrow.
Exercising creativity, et cetera.
Creativity, organizational, management. I mean, so the thing is like some people get to have that, some people don't. So that's half the answer, right? But the other half of the answer is actually the other half of the Fun Taste in Games book, which is the taste side of the equation. And so I got 3 more things for you. So it makes a little atomic diagram.
Okay.
It's play community, it's genre, and play style.
Okay.
So when you look at games through the lens of taste, there's the kind of games you play, which is the genre.
Okay.
There's the people that you like to play games with, your play community.
I see.
And then there's the play style, how you play. So you can play poker competitively. You can play it with the guys on the weekend.
Yes.
You can play it online just to kill time. And so that's what play style means.
You're playing to win versus you're playing for fun.
Yeah, and you can play the same damn game with the same damn people different ways, right? So it's really important. So when you talk about the kind of like that quality of can you use, or is there a hierarchy of good and bad games? I'd say it's probably closer to why you're playing the games. Like if your play community is obsessive compulsive, the prototype nerd in the basement, maybe that's not good for you. Maybe that community is not a healthy community to be a part of.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly if you look at the manosphere these days, you can make that argument easily.
And same with the play style. I mean, if you're all you care about is winning, that may not be a great way to play.
Yeah. As an aside, this idea that like if you're a young man who's a bit isolated and you play a game that only brings you into contact with young men who are isolated.
Yeah, it's like Fight Club, right?
But if you're playing a game that brings you in touch with older men and younger men and women and girls.
God forbid, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, man, maybe that might help a little bit.
Well, and the play community stuff is super important. There's a big piece of the book that talks about, I don't know if you ever followed it, the whole Gamergate thing.
Yes.
And ironically, I was with the group of journalists where Gamergate got started. So I kind of unwind that and tell that story.
I see.
And we talk a lot about how play community sounds so delightful, doesn't it?
It is. It has, yes.
Play community can be toxic and corrosive and horrible. And in fact, the Gamergate, I just say it, now I'm going to get doxxed and everything else. The Gamergate community felt under attack, which I sympathize with, but their response was like this really aggressive. There was no compromise, right? And so you look through the lens of play community, you say, play community doesn't have to mean la la la. It can be really ugly too.
I see.
So
before we wrap, I want to talk about a couple other things. One is I want to talk about retail environments. So you talked about one already, Disney.
Yeah.
I think the demise of retail is overstated.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, certainly retail like malls and big box stores are struggling, and they are for good reason. Amazon, for example. But the idea of going out and shopping, especially because it's more than just a utilitarian thing. It's not just a hammer.
That's right.
The idea is that it can be exciting and that it can be fun and it can be entertaining, and that good retail will be fun, exciting, and entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
And so imagine I had someone who worked in retail who listened to this podcast.
Imagine.
Well, because I don't know if I do.
I'm trying to imagine.
Someone who, a woman who owns a boutique, or someone who has a restaurant and this kind of thing. If you were to translate your lessons and you wanted to try to make a retail space experience, more fun.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you think about it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a couple of quick touch points. The first thing is Gilmore and Pine and Experience Economy nailed this, right?
Okay.
And I mean, it's anyone who works in any product line anywhere, selling anything, should go read the Experience Economy, because basically they said people don't buy commodities, they don't buy services the way they buy experiences. They actually are looking for this transformation. So, and they mean it really literally, like they're buying experiences, and their textbook case is the price of a cup of coffee.
Yes. I went to a coffee shop this morning, and I don't choose coffee shops arbitrarily. I choose them in part because of how they're lit and how the table
vibe,
feels,
man.
And exactly, and how loud it is or quiet it is, and the experience.
So that's just a great lens to put on it. Another book I just recently read, which is a fun book, is Stephen Johnson's Wonderland.
Okay.
He's a guy who writes a lot about innovation and stuff. And Wonderland's great. He's got a whole section there about retail. And the modern mall was really an invention of trying to create a retail experience. And we kind of forgot that, right? Once again, we just turned it into a machine for making it easy.
Yes.
I think we're starting to see a return to that. I don't know if you're familiar with like Meow Wolf, the art collective out of Santa Fe.
I've heard of it.
You
yes.
gotta go. It's amazing. It's kind of Funhouse meets art, but it's now the #1 tourist attraction in New Mexico. They're building a giant one in Denver. What's interesting is they're building this crazy art freak out in Las Vegas called Area 51. That, as best as I understand it, is actually an art experience with retail inside of it.
Okay.
So we're back to like what all those, remember all those restaurants, the big themed restaurants?
Yeah, sure.
They kind of
ESPN Sports Zone.
They kind of floundered in a certain sense, but I don't think they really
Hard Rock Cafe.
They never lost their appeal. People love that stuff.
Yes.
I mean, Casa Bonita in Denver. What's the first thing everybody says about Casa Bonita? Food's terrible.
Yes, they do.
To which I respond, name one other restaurant that's been around for 45 years.
When the food's terrible.
Where the food's terrible. It's because Casa Bonita is still an experience.
Yes.
So I think that my advice to any retail person, really anyone doing any product, is like, you really need to look at this. And now, Fun Tasting Games, not to cement my own role in all this. Is to
but I want you to.
It's just describing the aesthetics of that, right? It's just sort of say, like, everything's experience. Sitting in an empty room is an experience. But I think people are looking for these ambiguous experiences. They want to be transported.
Yes.
They don't want to buy a cup of coffee. They want to be...
They want to feel like they're in Italy,
yeah. Or you'll go to Italy
or
to
New York
coffee.
City or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
And so I think that there's just something to be said to sort of treat your product and your spaces with a little bit of play, and thus you can see why I would write a book called Luddick Forum for Architects.
Yeah.
Because then they can figure like, oh, there's an apparatus that I can deploy to do this stuff.
Yes, I
kind of makes sense, at least to my head.
I'm going to give you a friendly note as someone who cares about you. Are you committed to calling this book Luddick Form of Architecture?
No.
That's
just a word.
That's your working title. Okay.
By the way, look at the title of the book we just wrote about fun.
Well, I already had a note about that title.
We rewrote the book. I'm not kidding. Probably 10 times.
Okay.
Somehow we never thought about actually updating the working title, and there it is. And to me, it's hilarious.
So
it's hilarious how bad the title is.
So you mentioned Danny Kahneman earlier. I did my postdoc with Danny.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I learned a lot of lessons from him.
Okay.
And one of the things that Danny said is naming things is important.
Okay.
And that has always stuck with me.
You're a marketing professor, right? But
this is
write that down.
Yeah, but this is before I even was a marketing professor. And so if you think about it, like calling the Humor Research Lab the Humor Research Lab, and then figuring out the acronym was HURL.
Yeah, that's a win.
It's a huge win. I mean, the payoff of that, it took me 45 minutes.
Yeah. The
payoff of that extra 15 minutes is enormous. So, in case, last question. What are you reading or watching or listening to that's really good, that stands out as outstanding?
That's a good question. A lot of the things I've talked about. I mean, Wonderland's the last book I just finished.
Okay.
And like one of his lines in that book is like, if you want to know where things are heading, look where people are having the most fun.
I see.
So, of course, I'm kind of like, hey, cool, this guy's telling this cultural history about this aesthetic stuff. And so that's it's a really delightful book. It's an easy read. I'm about halfway through Thinking Fast and Slow. Someone gave it to me years ago. And, that's a super interesting book for a bunch of reasons, not the least of which is, no one ever said this, but it's just fascinating, it's an intellectual history of his career.
That's right.
It's just fun seeing how that all kind of worked out.
The alternative to that is to read The Undoing Project by Michael Lewis. So Michael Lewis wrote a book about Danny and Amos. Amos Tversky is his partner in much of this work.
I love Michael Lewis. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, so I haven't read it only because I know it so well already, from lore and being part of it. But that will give a narrative element to it that is probably not as strong as in Thinking Fast and Slow.
The only other thing I'll tell you, and this is magic, actually fits right in the middle of all this fun stuff. It actually adheres to the FTG model pretty well. There's a magic blog. Most magic blogs are terrible. There's a magic blog called The Jerks.
Okay, I'm not familiar.
Yeah, there's almost no reason to let people know about it because the guy's essentially he's built an interesting business model where he doesn't want more customers. And so he's just kind of going to stop. He's going to kind of stop publishing the blog unless you're one of his subscribers, and he's also got a set subscriber base. So I'm just saying, I'm giving you a bad recommendation, but go look at The Jerks and go back and read the stuff that's there. It's hilarious and it's fascinating, and it's absolutely some of the best writing about magic I've ever read.
That's fun. So tell me why is he creating scarcity? Why is he limiting his subscriber base?
I don't know. I think what it really amounts to is that he figured out with X number of subscribers paying X amount a year that he could service that, and that would be fine.
Interesting.
I really don't know. He's also would say he's the guy that invented this notion of amateur magic. He doesn't want to do stage performance. He likes doing experiences for individuals.
Oh, that's fun. There's a book called, I think I'm going to get it wrong, Small Giants.
Huh.
Little Giants? Small. I think it's Small Giants. And it's about businesses that purposely stay small.
Yeah.
So the author does a bunch of case studies. So, for instance, he uses Annie DeFranco as an example.
Yeah.
She stayed in Buffalo rather than go to New York or Los Angeles. And he talks about a beer company and this guy sounds like he would fit very well.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I really never thought about it. I just, I'm kind of like, hey, cool, I made it in the door before he closed it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, certainly it helps with regard to loyalty. David, this was fun. I always have a list of exhibits. This is going to be one of my longer lists, so this is great.
Good.
For all these things, and I really appreciate you doing this.
It's been a blast. It's fun. It's even funny too.
There were some good laughs.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to visit petermcgraw.org for more information about our guest, show notes, and social media links. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with others. Join Dr. Peter McGraw